In 363 AD, 43 mystery books, one of which was the Magia Jesu Christi of the most accomplished initiate of the Kanoibi priesthood in Egypt, Jehosuah ben Nazaria, or Jesus Christ, were immediately secreted upon their release. This is the knowledge they contained. In this current cycle of humanity, after the biblical deluge or Great Flood that ended the ancient civilization of the giants of Atlantis, Arya, the Mexican Nagual, and Chem, the next birthplace or inheritors of the true Jesus Christ knowledge was India. The Hindus taught to return good for evil, known as the Golden Rule, at the heart of Jesus Christ's teachings. But the Abrahamic Jewish Mosaic command is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. One is love, the other hate. These are clearly two separate spiritual philosophies, and his career as a public rabbi was long enough to prove Jesus Christ established a regular school of his own. Located in the rock temple upon the mountain he rose from a valley he called Petra Roma, or, in its literal sense, translated as the Hindu rock, both referencing and paying reverence to the Roma, or traveling Hindi people of South Asia, to teach of the Petra, and, with the exception of John the Baptist and Mary Magdalene, it does not seem that others had fully grasped his teachings in the purest sense, though they were clearly both intended to continue initiating others. And as you all know, Christians had different plans for them. One was beheaded, the other prostituted against her will, literally. The apostolic designation Peter is itself from the mysteries, as already highly hinted. The Supreme Pontiff, Hierophant, or High Priest, also bore the title as the Interpreter, Interpreter, or Intrapetra. When the divine Christos joins the humanly serpent, or fish, it is represented in Hierophant initiations as the two stone tablets, or commandments, or the wisdom of the wine and bread, the Eucharist. The Christos, the wine, or blood first contained in the Holy Grail, and the bread, the serpent, or fish, or serpent seed that contains it. The wine, the Christos, or blood of the first cause, and the bread, emanation, or serpent and fish, which arise from and unite in the feminine menstruum, called the Petroma, the invisible feminine temple, the womb, or the church of the Peter Roma. Sound familiar? These are the true pagan origins of the Christian Church, found dead on the rock of Peter, found dead indeed, but without any of the truth, intelligence, and intellect of the morally, spiritually, and mentally superior pagan hierophants, like Mary Magdalene, Pythagoras, Quetzalcoatl, the Buddha, and Jesus Christ. In Greek, the double set of stone tablets used by pagan hierophants at initiations during the final mystery are the signettes of the wisdom of the bread, Ceres, and wine, Bacchus, which unite in the fullness of the feminine Greek pleroma. The Christian priests also adopted the serpent scepter of the pagan hierophant, copied his cap from the Hindu Supreme Pontiff, whose unity is represented by Brahma, who is known as a fish charmer, and whose emanation is Krishna, who represents Krishna consciousness, and whose devotees are Christians, whose signet is the fish, and whose cross is formed by two fishes. The Greek word for Christos shares its roots in the same Sanskrit word Chris, which means sacred, as similarly used in the Hindu Krishna. The Hindu infinite singularity called the Atman the Ataman, came to be the Christian Adaman. And as mentioned before, the Hindu unity was called the Brahma, which the Christian priest stole and Frankensteined into Abraham, and turned Christians into Christians. Don't forget, Krishna was born of a virgin, was crucified on a tree, died, and was resurrected 3 days later. Oh, and Osiris. Osiris was also born of a virgin, crucified, died, and was resurrected 3 days later. And Buddha, though he died under a tree. And this is starting to sound familiar to Bacchus, the red blood wine in the Golden Grail god, who was also resurrected and born of a virgin. Quetzalcoatl was also born of a virgin and resurrected. See a pattern emerging? A global universal pattern? All revolving around the central orbit of the serpent? And remember, in Egypt, the Petroma or Pleroma or Petraroma is this hieroglyphic on a stela. This sign, which is the mystical counterpart to the letters and word Petra, meaning to show, or the Eye of Horus. And this eye is only open through the trinity of Osiris, Isis, and Thought. Osiris, Christos the wine, Thought, the intellect, the serpent or bread, and Isis, the menstruum or Petroma, which opens the Eye of Horus, or the pineal gland, the emerald tablet, or third eye, from which flows the Greek Jesus Christos, or by today's nomenclature, the Jesus Christ, the healing oil, the sacred secretion, the serpent of salvation, the intellect of an enlightened brain. Jesus Christ is the serpentine healing oil of salvation, secreted from the pineal gland, but only after the activation of the pineal gland is flipped to the on switch, which the serpent science of the Ophite staff or Egyptian caduceus, Tau, or cross teaches one how to accomplish. The mystical manuscripts of the 1st century in which all this knowledge of Jesus Christ was contained. His countless codexes, amongst which the Magia Jesu Christi was the only one kept preserved by the priests, who originally initiated him in Konoibi, were eventually burned in the 2nd and 3rd centuries by morally inept Christian vandals as heresy, blasphemy, and magical. Most of it was hidden in the cave temple Jehosuah rose from the valley and preserved in clay pots, and found in the 20th century by a young boy throwing rocks into said cave. And when they were released once more, and for the last time in 363 AD to the Syrian mystery school established by King Iamblichus by the Koinobi priesthood. All traces of the Koinobi, their desert dwellings, temples of initiation, their books and story of their most prominent initiate were destroyed, burnt to the ground, and all mentions in the history books erased yet again. Yet, in the saved manuscript of the Serpent Codex of Jesus Christ, whose mission was to free the sheeple and have a world of shepherds by initiating them in his Magia Jesu Christi, one of his principal heroes called the Initiate is made to communicate with the Pater through an illuminator. This illuminator or hierophant inhabits a cave as a conduit to this Pater, teaching the multitudes of eager scholars standing outside. The scholar or initiate receives the words of wisdom of the invisible God, the Pater, by applying his ear to a circular hole in a partition which conceals the illuminator or priest, who then conveys from the Pater to the scholar the words of wisdom with explanations and glossaries. He was the Deus ex machina, where the presiding but invisible deity, the Pater or Petra, uttered the divine will to the initiate through a second party, the Hierophant or Intrapetra, in the Petraroma, the rock church. The greatest of all the Christian frauds that Christians cling to is also the very rock upon which the dogma of apostolic succession is founded, the bedrock of its existence, and thus its very continuation. Peter the Rock of Rome. It is all a lie. This was the same method used by Pythagoras, who never allowed his students, like Socrates, to see him, but instructed them from behind a curtain in his cave, and misappropriated by the lunatic Christian confessional, with a distinct difference being, it is the Hierophant priest confessing the secret knowledge of God to the initiate, not the perverse, crack-brained opposite of a one-sided interrogation. The initiate or scholar was encouraged to debate, interrogate, and ask for clarification as a sign of their independent intellect and power for critical self-thought, while the Christian is a sinner whose truth should be silent and whose voice shall never question the living word of God, which
is the Holy Bible.
The word pater, Petra, Peter, locates both master and disciple in the circle of initiation, represented by the triple tau of Christos, serpent, and Petroma. And the twisted, sick perversion of this is the basis for future Masonic buildings, posing as Christian governments and church centers, which is why they're not taxed, but should be, if not at least banned as cults, which they are, because they're all again used for the spiritual retardation and cognitive sterilization of the masses. More than 2,000 years later, we can now know the truth that whether Jesus was initiated either by the Petra of the Egyptians, the Petraroma of the Hindus, the Pleroma of the Pythagoreans, or the Codex of the Kabbalist Nazarenes, Jesus was undoubtedly, beyond the shadow of a doubt, initiated. Otherwise, he could not have learned of the secret doctrine taught by and only by pagan hierophants. Because the sacred teaching of the Petra of this vignette is the sacred secretion of the Jesus Christ healing oil from the activated pineal gland, accessed only by awakening the inner serpent seed of the Holy Grail with the knowledge of the serpent science, also known as the basis of mesmerism. Because like a cobra, your inner serpent is always being mesmerized. But there comes an age when you discover that you have a choice, the power to choose you or reject you. Because you are either being mesmerized by you, your dreams, visualizations, scripting, hopes, and aspirations. And if you shy away from this knowledge, are convinced it is evil, or deny it entirely, then you will never know the power that comes from taming and mesmerizing your own inner cobra, and the power of its venom to dissolve the veil of reality society has already mesmerized you with. Because that is the power of no longer denying, but befriending your inner serpent. It dissolves the lies and fallacies, and like venom to muscles, the body of society's lies die. Which alludes to the power of Jesus Christ's favorite saying, "Be ye wise as serpents." This is the knowledge of the apple of the tree of knowledge, the Kabbalist tree, the tree of life, the caduceus, the serpent staff, the cross, all one and the same, born from the tetragrammaton, which is your mind and the mind of God, and thus, the only God you need is the gray matter in your brain, all of which is knowledge called by the ignorant, dumb, and easily prone to violence as the forbidden fruit of the serpent of damnation. Like the illuminator in this early 1st century BCE manuscript attributed to Jehosuah, we find Jehosuah selecting a mystery appellation, For one who is made to be the interpreter of the will of Christos, the first emanation, and that illuminator Jehosuah calls Petra, who was most likely meant to be John the Baptist, but who was beheaded to prevent exactly this. And he was only second to the first, the true Petra, the true chosen Pope of Jehosuah, Mary of Magdala, who was, well, for lack of better words, #MeToo'd. Emphatically obvious is that the Apostle Peter was never ever in Rome proper either. The Christian Church chose as her titular founder the cowardly character of the apostle who 3 times denied his master at the haunting moment of danger, and the only one moreover, except for Judas, who provoked Jesus Christ in such a way as to be addressed as the enemy, declaring, "Cast thee behind me, Satan." When frightened at the accusation of being the servant of the high pagan priest known as Jesus Christ, the Apostle Peter thrice denied his master, and Jesus Christ said to him, "Verily I say unto thee, Peter, and by extension every self-proclaimed Christian out there today, thou shalt deny me throughout the coming ages, and never stop until thou shalt be old, and shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee, and carry thee whither thou wouldst not." Which simply means that Jesus Christ prophesied exactly how the Christian churches born of Rome would constantly sin against Jesus Christ, the true redeemer of the great brain matter within, under the mask of a false religion whose Jehovistic Godhead was to Jesus Christ, an evil thuggish serpent mafia crime boss, phallus and ball, and prophesied like a true prophet, Jesus did. As if totally perverting the true knowledge of the Jesus Christ, and secreting its true meaning away was not enough of a slap to Jesus' true mission. The Christian Church and every one of its Christian followers ever since then, of the petty Jehovah Adonai, put Jesus Christ's greatest and self-proclaimed enemy at the head of their church, found dead on lies and deceit. In essence, objectively making the Christian Church the de facto enemies of their own Jesus Christ Redeemer. Finally, Jesus Christ was captured after being deceived by Judas Iscariot, who romantically loved Jesus and betrayed him as a stilted lover, jealous of Mary of Magdala. Jesus loved and accepted Judas, who was persecuted for his homosexuality, and though he wore his red hair long, as was the tradition of the women and men of the Nazarenes, he wore it femininely, just like Mary, Jehosuah's chosen. Yet Judas was openly and intimately loved, accepted, uplifted, enabled, and protected by Jesus and his growing fellowship. In the singular act is the purity of Jehosuah's love in its radical acceptance and supreme indifference of others, of just live and let live, because we are all just God in God. Judas concocted a trap to ensure Jehosuah could not simply fly away, entrapping him in the cave formed in the Pythagorean spirit, on top of the mountain from which he preached his many sermons. After ensuring Jehosuah was within the cave and could not fly away, Judas. In the next Occult Secrets Revealed, we will finally get to Jehosuah's capture, imprisonment, torture, and demise. How every tool implemented in the biblical events were used to keep Jehosuah from flying away and escaping. How the greatest magi of our age was beastly bested by savage mongrels who would today call themselves Christians. And until next time, trust and believe that it is okay to be you, the most beautiful you there ever was, there is, and that there ever will be, because you are not a story that can be told twice, and there will never again be a stage for you to perform but this one, right here, right now. So be you, the most beautiful you.